Welcome to chapter 19. This is our last chapter in the text, and we've had 19 chapters that we've covered. We've covered the whole text on negotiations. And so, anytime you want to come back to these videos, you're welcome to come back to them and check out the whole scene on negotiations. So, let's get started on our last and final chapter 19. All right. So, in chapter 19, like I said, we are going to discuss the whole, the final chapter, really, the third party approaches to managing difficult negotiations. And so, we're going to start our slideshow here. So, resolving differences, third party approaches to managing difficult negotiations. Adding third parties to the two-party negotiation process involves third-party intervention, which should be avoided as long as negotiations have a chance to proceed unaided. When needed, interventions should be timely and thoughtful. The negotiators may seek third-party intervention, or it may be imposed by choice, custom, law, or regulation. In addition, informal third parties may impose on the situation and bring perspective from someone not in the dispute. Now, as a rule, interventions not sanctioned by the parties are unwelcome and ineffective. Right? So benefits and liabilities of third-party intervention include they provide stability, civility, and forward momentum. Other benefits include it creates a cooling off period, enhanced communication, refocus on the issues, repairs strained relationships, establishes deadlines, and establishes sunk costs. Finally, it increases satisfaction and commitment. So, involvement is a signal that talks have stalled. It may signal the parties have failed to build relationships, especially true for arbitration. Now, arbitration surrenders outcome controls. Mediation and consultation enhance resolution skills, and then each type of intervention has its own advantages and disadvantages. When is the third party involvement appropriate? In general, negotiators initiate third party involvement when they believe they can no longer manage the situation. Intervention must be acceptable to both parties. A list of conditions could warrant a third party's involvement, including intense emotions preventing a settlement. Now, negotiators should consider alternatives when deciding to engage in third party litigation, mediation, or arbitration. Now, also, negotiators need to be aware of their interplay between third parties and litigation, thinking carefully about the banta. Continuing of conflict management and resolution approaches are demonstrated on the screen. So decisions made by negotiators include conflict avoidance, discussion and problem solving, and informal negotiation, then mediation. Decisions made by parties is administrative decisions, arbitration. Decision made by legal authoritative parties or judicial decisions, and legislative decisions. External legal decisions are non-valid direct actions or violence. So as we go across this continuum here, we increase cohesion and more likelihood of win-lose decisions in the process. So categories of third-party intervention include level of negotiator control over outcomes. And then here you go, low are autocracy and high is arbitration. High is mediation, low is mediation, and then high is negotiations. So which type of intervention is appropriate? Mediation is the most common, and negotiators surrender control over the process, maintaining control over outcomes. If involvement is necessary, use minimally intrusive intervention. Procedure-only interventions support negotiators with guidance and assistance. Failure to use third party when appropriate is just as damaging as using the wrong method or the right one at the wrong time. Timeliness applies to uninvited interventions as well as to avoid negative effects. Interventions have negative consequences, and they should be used in moderation. So types of third-party intervention include third-party intervention may be formal or informal. Formal interventions are intentionally designed in advance and follow a set of rules or standards. Used by judges, labor arbitrators, divorce mediators, referees, and group facilitators. That's third-party interventions. So informal interventions are incidental to the negotiations. A manager or friend may become involved in someone else's dispute. The proliferation of hybrid forms of dispute resolution has blurred this traditional separation. Formal intervention methods in arbitration. So arbitration resolves a disagreement by having a neutral third party impose a decision. Arbitrators may rule on a single issue or on a total settlement package. Arbitration may be voluntary or binding, and an arbitrator's decision may be freely crafted or constrained as final offer arbitrations. Used in labor relations or claims of contract violations. Most states have lemon laws. Union use interest arbitration and grievance arbitration. There are two distinct advantages. They impose a clear-cut resolution and avoids cost of resolved disputes. Negative consequences in arbitration. The chilling effect, parties avoid compromises. Belief that the arbitrator will split the difference. The narcotic effect, when arbitration is anticipated, negotiators may stop the negotiation. The half-line effect is as the number of decisions increase, the likelihood of satisfaction decreases. Now there's the bias effect. When arbitrators have perceived patterns of partiality. And finally, the decision acceptance effect is when parties are more committed if the decision is not forced onto them. So the consequences again of negative arbitration includes the chilling effect, the narcotic effect, the half-line effect, the biasing effect, and the decision acceptance effect. Formal intervention methods for mediation include the objective is the same as the arbitration, but mediation seeks the objective by having the parties develop the agreement. So there's transformative mediation, and then negotiators see the other's perspective through this process. Mediation is based on rules and procedures, but the mediators have no formal power and no resolved disputes. Effectiveness comes from empathy and encouragement. 4 conflict dimensions where a mediator should be considered include the quality of the conflict, the relationship, the context, and process and issues. Mediators are not powerless, guys. If they have access to resources negotiators want, and they give disputes face. So when to use mediation? Now, there are 2 elements of mediation or integral to the success and timing of the mediator's acceptability. Mediation is more successful if occurring when the parties are open to receiving help, a phenomenon known as rightness. An intractable situation is just on the verge of being addressable, and mediators may be certified, and they may bring skill, trustworthiness, integrity, impartiality, and experience to the dispute. All of these may be required for both sides to find the mediator acceptable. Mediator models choices and behaviors. Mediators choose approaches they think will be effective. Context mediation, issue identification, positive framing of the issues. There are three general sequences of issues. Gradualism, boulder in the road, and committee strategy. Research on mediator style shows two orientations: settlement orientation and problem-solving orientation. Two main types of mediators were deal makers and orchestrators. The magic or the strategic choice model uses two variables to produce four basic mediation strategies. Again, the strategic choice model uses two variables to produce four basic mediation strategies. Those four are problem solving, compensation, pressure, and inaction. So when mediation is effective, when is it effective? It appears more effective in situations of moderate conflict and also during a hurting stalemate. Mediation was less effective when there was internal conflict or when the parties differ on economic issues or outcome expectations. Mediators may have to exert direct or indirect pressure on negotiators to create a positive bargaining zone. They can influence the zone by asking each party what they think the other party would accept and asking them to suggest a range of outcomes they would accept. Mediator guys should push for agreement when a positive bargaining zone exists. So there are formal intervention methods, and these are process consultations. This is a set of activities that help the client perceive, understand, and act upon events in the client's environment. The objective is to diffuse the emotions of conflict and improve communication to help manage future disputes. The difference between mediation and process consultation is that mediators address the issues in the dispute. Process consultants focus only on communication and conflict management. The purpose is to create the foundation for productive dialogue and teach conflict escalation prevention. Process consultation behaviors. The first step is usually to separate the parties and interview them to determine each side's view of the other. They work to ensure the conflict does not escalate. They should possess attributes similar to the other third parties, guys. So for the process to work, parties must manage their conflict processes. Now, research studies contribute to a better understanding. Less effective when parties are in deep dispute, ineffective for short-term relationships, may be ineffective for distributive or zero-sum issues, and ineffective when conflict level is so high, parties seek revenge. Now, combining formal intervention methods. So there's mediation, arbitration, or med-ed, ARP, and then arbitration, mediation, ARP-med. Now, the first is on the mediation arbitration, is using mediation as a first step to arbitration should facilitate conflict dispute, but only for final offer attribution. Conventionally, parties would wait for attribution rather than making concessions during the mediation process. With final offer attribution, mediation is an incentive to relook at the current position. Arbitration, mediation. This approach has three stages. The first stage is the arbitrator holds a hearing and makes a decision, keeping the decision secret. Mediation occurs next, and if agreement is not reached, then the arbitration ruling is revealed and is binding. Formal intervention methods. Other third-party approaches are possible, used informally. A study concluded managers use one of three dominant styles when intervening in a subordinate's conflict. In questionable intervention, a manager would exert high control over both process and decisions, excuse me, adversarial, adversarial intervention. Our managers would exert high control over the decision, but not the process. And then providing impetus. Managers would not exert control over the decision, and only a small amount of control over the process. Now, so which approach is more effective, you may be asking? Managers really appear to think that they mediate when they exert more control over the outcome than the mediators. And there may be a positive benefit if mediation was used more often. But managers fail to recognize the opportunities. While mediation may be preferable to autocratic decisions, timing appears to be crucial or critical. Third parties can influence conflict at 3 stages. And those stages are the prevent the conflict stage, conflicts are emerging; the resolve conflict stage, conflicts are emerged and managed. And then the contain conflict stage is the ongoing conflicts are contained. And that does it for us in chapter 19. And that was a really big chapter there. There are alternative dispute resolution systems, and those are from an organizational standpoint, a certain type of level of conflict is acceptable, guys, and advisable, but there are costs to ongoing unresolved conflict as usual. The American organizations began using formal ADR processes in the 1980s, providing fast economical dispute resolutions. So they're preventive, negotiated, facilitated, fact-finding, advisory, and imposed. Those are formal ADR procedures. So, but there are factors undermining ADR systems, and those include the need to win. There are key design factors of healthy, effective systems: inclusion, a positive culture, and multiple access points, options and choices, and supported structures to alternative dispute resolution systems. Thank you. That was chapter 19, our final chapter in this text, and I hope you got a lot out of it, and I look forward to seeing you in our discussions about this chapter.